Welcome to Liberty Nation TV with Scott Cosenza, and joining me today is LibertyNation.com's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner. Welcome, Lisa.
Good to be here, Scott.
And we're going to talk about your piece on LibertyNation.com called The Media Elephant in the Room. And we had a big interview on Sunday with Donald Trump and his seemingly favorite interviewer now, Maria Bartiromo, where he said that there was no free or fair press, I think, in this country.
Yeah, well, he said we don't have any freedom of the press in the country. We have suppression by the press. And I think he makes a valid point. I mean, the point of the press is to deliver the news. And I suppose always, if you even go back to our founding, there have been instances of, well, more than instances, but the press has leaned towards or against. But I think when you omit major pieces of news, like an election that is being actively contested, you don't do the Republic any good.
Is there a story besides the Hunter Biden laptop story, which I think it's not debatable whether that was suppressed? I mean, it was the greatest act of suppression, I think, of the story in recent memory. Is there another that springs to mind that you can think of that really did damage to the Trump candidacy in terms of suppressing it?
Well, I think there are so many right now that are going on with this election fraud situation. I mean, there's machines breaking in Georgia. There is the FBI possibly investigating election fraud, which you have to find on Russia Today. I mean, why is that? Fox is so ridiculously silent and so on the election fraud issue and willing to kind of go along with the pack. You know, this is the boys on the bus turned 180.
I said to Tim Donner on the Uprising podcast that we recorded, I think it was after the wake of Fox's calling or not calling, depending on how you do the math, from election night. And I said, you know, if you were not a conservative, why would you watch Fox News? And then in the wake of their recent decisions, it seems like if you are a conservative, why would you watch Fox News? Do they have an audience moving forward?
Well, I think they're doing great damage to themselves, and they sort of think they're superior and above it all. But I think what's happening is that their base is sort of floundering right now. They're going to other places. They're going to the alternative outlets. They're going to places like LibertyNation.com or Newsmax, which...
Let me just stop you right there and say, you know, Newsmax had, of course, its own sort of problem with its core audience because of some of the comments of its founder, Chris Ruddy. Do you care to comment on that?
Well, I don't.
Okay.
I said everything I need to say about Chris Ruddy. I thought you were actually stopping the broadcast for a minute there because, you know, my mother always said, when you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Let's
say, hypothetically, there was a person out there in the audience.
Let me just say one thing. Let me just cut in and say one thing. Universally, there is one show on Newsmax that is, a lot of people are really enjoying, and that is the Greg Kelly Report. But basically, there's thousands of people adrift because they don't know where to turn to get their news. And what happens is that when big tech teams up with big media or so-called big box media, you get a real mess on your hands. So then you have big tech suppressing, say, not the Washington Post, the New York Post story on Hunter Biden. Then you have the news media outlets, mainstream news media outlets, deciding they're not going to talk about election fraud issues at all and just go about on their merry way. I mean, that really is leaving the elephant in the middle of the room.
Okay, well, perhaps it's time to let the healing begin, or too soon for the people.
You know, the problem is you can't call for unity and peace and love and kumbaya if you haven't let people have their time to air their grievances. They need to be heard. And shutting them up and shutting them down is just not a good method to heal or to be unified. So, they're going to cover the fact that Joe Biden was playing with his dog and has a hairline fracture in his foot. Fine, but that shouldn't be instead of the fact that the FBI may be looking into election fraud. That shouldn't be instead of what happened last week in Gettysburg. That shouldn't be instead of, all the things that are, whether they're legitimate or not, isn't the point. They're news, they're happening. Sidney Powell puts out some information. It should be reported. Again, whether it is viable or not is not up to the media. This era of omission is getting to be ridiculous.
Lisa, I think you're behind the news here in the cycle. I will tell you that it was revealed this past weekend that Joe Biden and Dr. Biden are adding a cat to the Biden household. So there you have it. That'll be the new thing.
I was going to say, is that on the front page of the New York Times today?
Thanks for subscribing to the LN MemberZone. Lisa, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, you have a lengthy experience in legacy media and now sort of new media. And I wondered, do you think that, and I take it as a given that most of the legacy media wishes desperately to see Joe Biden be the next president of the United States rather than Donald Trump, and have used their words and platforms to advance that interest. So here's my question: If Donald Trump did concede, if he said, okay, Joe Biden's gonna be the next president, and also let's look at these problems with fraud and abuse and whatever in the process, so they thought they could write about it without threatening who would be the next president from their perspective, do you think we'd see some different coverage on these issues? Or
that's interesting. That's a very good question. I think we might see a little bit more from places like the Wall Street Journal. I still think there'd be plenty of spin and, unfortunately, somebody coined this, and I think it's true. The media has largely become, the legacy media has largely become the media wing of the Democratic Party. Now, this has gotten out of hand in terms of their spinning things, but now they're omitting so much basic information. It's really very egregious, and it doesn't serve the American public, nor does it serve our republic very well. So I think in instances like that, where it doesn't threaten the outcome, maybe, but I'm not sure it would be too much, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, let's say there was somebody who already spent as much of their time as possible consuming everything that LibertyNation.com put out, and they were still looking for more conservative news. Where would you send them to? Where are there other reliable outlets that you consider, that you look to stuff, or is it just catch as catch can? You just have to be super skeptical of any piece of information you get out there.
Well, let me give you my philosophy as editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com. The point of it was to have an organization that is openly conservative, but isn't conspiratorial crazy. We check and double check our facts. Now, if you look on some of the left-leaning sites that like to discredit sites like ours, they'll say we're extremely right-wing. I don't think we're extremely right-wing. We write, the truth from a conservative perspective. We also have
I wish you hadn't even said that, because to me it's objectively not true. Meaning, it's objectively not true that we're very right-wing, simply because if you publish articles that cast a positive light, for instance, on completely legalizing every drug, on elimination of the death penalty, on non-intervention in foreign war, tell me where that tracks with what's published. It's just not true. What is true is that there's an open platform for conservative ideas that are more right-wing to be published alongside of other ideas to get to, what's a good analysis of any particular thing.
Well, that was the point that I was about to make. We have some libertarians on board. My idea is to let 1,000 flowers bloom. Somebody wants to write an article on the Second Amendment, that's fine. Unfortunately, it'll get shut down on Facebook. Talking about the big tech guys, this is fun, and this is really a MemberZone inside information. Recently, we did an article, I believe it was Andrew Moran, and we had a picture. No. It was a Rabbit Hole podcast by Mark Angelides, our managing editor. And on the cover, and he's from the UK, on the cover page of the Rabbit Hole was Winston Churchill smoking a cigar. Well, that got stopped by Facebook and banned because of their no smoking policy.
No history policy, I suppose, too.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. It's like some algorithm catches a guy with a cigar in his mouth and boom, you're banned.
The first I ever heard of that was somebody doing it to an Ayn Rand photo. And if you know anything about Ayn Rand, she was not only a smoker, but she was like pro-smoking. She talked about how much she liked it, how much she, all these things about, she romanticized it, which obviously is not helpful in terms of a health perspective. But if you want to actually publish a photo of this person, you can't airbrush out, the things that they say that are important to them and call it real. I think, it's a.
Well, I can tell you right now, we're having a discussion about smoking. YouTube would love to ban this. I mean, I think the more suppression that goes on, the more people will search out alternatives like Liberty Nation. You were asking about other sites. I like the Federalist a lot.
Well, let me continue asking about other sites and just ask you on an exit question. A year from now, without the midterms in sight, what does Fox News and MSNBC's viewership look like? Is it a shell of its former self, or do you think they can get purchased with whatever's happening in the new administration and its opposition?
Well, MSNBC stays the same, but I think Fox is going to get hit. I think they're going to get hit pretty hard.
I'm gonna say you're wrong about MSNBC. Without Trump to beat up on, they will tank. Thanks for watching this special segment of Liberty Nation TV, and thanks for subscribing to Liberty Nation News MemberZone, where you get more content, including articles on culture, politics, and current events. I'm Scott Cosenza. Thanks for being part of the LN community. This has been a production of LibertyNation.com, conservative news where truth matters.